Welcome to May's Tech of the Month. This month we have a lot of new releases. We have new pumps from Silca, Muc-Off's strangest new product, a landmark release from Hunt, a new, slightly more affordable bike from Factor, and of course, the brand new Cannondale Synapse. But first, Silca have released these new pumps, and it's fair to say that they are joining a hotbed of activity. So much so that actually it was probably about a month ago now that we released our own video testing some of the most popular portable electric mini pumps on the market. And it was very interesting to compare all of those models against each other. But now that Silca's come out with theirs, I'm really keen to get my hands on it and see how it performs.
Yeah, so obviously Silca's been around a long time, and being the maestro in the internet world of electric mini pumps, what stood out in this press release? Is there anything that sort of really jumps out that these really could compete with the best?
One of my favourite things actually is that they have got a very similar form factor to the Silca Plus pumps. Now I'll link them all below in case you want to find them for yourself, but in testing, the Silca Plus AS2 and the AS2 Pro came out as kind of my top picks after all the testing that I had done. And one of the things I really liked was how there wasn't this huge nozzle sticking out, and Silca have done the same thing. Just makes it sit in a saddlebag or pocket much easier. But there's other things like the fact that you can fully kind of like replace and rebuild the internal components within those pumps, meaning that should anything go wrong, it's not a case of throwing it away and then getting a replacement. You know, you could probably service this thing. So that's really cool.
That's a big thing as well for these kind of pumps as well, because they are not cheap. You know, you can pick up a mini pump. Okay, premium mini pumps, to be fair, aren't cheap either, but a lot of these sort of products are coming in around the £100 mark. If you drop it, all of that breaks. You don't really want to be replacing the whole thing if you can avoid it. So I think that is a really nice thing. But a word on that as well, how do these stack up with price? Because of course, Silca is a premium product, generally speaking.
Yeah, premium product, and it's fair to expect that premium price. And it's only after testing that we'll be able to say whether or not that is justified. The Electro Micro comes in at £119 here in the UK. So it is definitely probably about £30 or £40 more than some of the other competition. Actually not that different to the Thumper Nano.
Which off the top of my head, I believe that's about £90, isn't it?
Yeah, around there. I think that it's going to be really interesting to get hands on it because with that micro one, Silca claims that it can do the equivalent of 4 CO2 canisters worth of inflations, and the larger pump can do around 10. And they say that they've used like cell phone batteries so that they can get that fast charge time and get quite a lot of capacity into a small form factor.
And other than that, are there any other particular features that are worth knowing about?
Well, quick fire. Few little cool things that I do really like is that they are compatible with the Silca chucks.
Okay.
So Silca, they do make a Schrader quick kind of like quick adapter, so you can just push it on and use it. I think that's really cool. And then the pumps actually come with a flexi hose, so if you want to screw it onto a press the valve, say if you're using a TPU tube, then it means that the heat generated by the pump doesn't damage the tube, which is good. 2-year warranty, which is better than a lot of the other pumps that are out there, so I think that's quite nice. And then Silca are also claiming a ±1% accuracy, which is also quite good.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's potentially a pretty quality product.
There was also some claims, if I remember rightly, about them being relatively quiet as well, which is, I must say, quite a big thing for these pumps. I was on a group ride about a week or so ago, and I had one of these go, and it was the first time a lot of my friends had seen one of these pump things. And I turned it on, and all of them were just like, "What on earth is that?" So because that was a Muc-Off one.
Yeah.
Of course, very functional, and you know, like it's a bit of noise is absolutely fine. But I think that was one of the things I did think. Yeah, it would be nice if this was slightly less conspicuous.
Well, that's it. I think, you know, part and parcel of these units is that they do make a fair bit of noise.
Yeah.
And they do vibrate a lot. Silca claims to have reduced the sound by 8 decibels, which it's something.
Yeah.
I mean, you're definitely not going to complain about that at all. But ultimately, you just have to accept that it's a noisy product. I mean, I do really like the look of these things. I really like that full metal construction. I think that looks really smart. I'm really keen to get my hands on them and test them and compare them to the Cyc Plus units.
See how they stack up.
Because, if the claims are to be believed, could be a real kind of title contender for best electric mini pump.
There you go. Heard it here first.
Now, Joe, I think you've spotted a pretty cool bike recently. Tell us more about it.
I have indeed. Yes, so it's the number 22 bicycle company, Reactor Aero. Now, there's been a lot of conversation over the last few years about 3D printed titanium, whether it's lugs, whether it's small components on bikes. But we are actually getting near to what number 22 is calling the world's first fully optimized aero 3D printed titanium road bike, which is a mouthful.
That is a mouthful.
But essentially, this is a bike that hopes to be delivered in late 2025. You can put a deposit down for £1,000 to secure your bike. I think, as I say, end of 2025 is when they're hoping to get these to customers. The reason this is interesting is because up until this point, with traditional titanium engineering, generally the sticking points have been either hydroforming tubes, meaning you can't necessarily shape them exactly how you want to, and then either mitering or welding these together often makes joins that are maybe, not unsightly per se, but it's much more difficult to make them aerodynamically optimized. This technology allows, as you'll see in the photos, for properly shaped tubes and unlocks really a whole new world when it comes to aero bikes. With them being 3D printed as well, you can see down the line, potentially can these be fitted to an individual rider, for example. I think the thing here is this is an amazing bike, but where can this technology go next?
Completely agree. And I think it just has to be said, even if you just step back from all the technology.
Oh, yeah.
What a thing of beauty.
It does look good, doesn't it? I think, we would love to have something like this in the Cycling Weekly studio to see, because it's a proper head turner. Does come with a head turning price tag as well. I think each frame set is estimated, so still estimated, even though they're being delivered this year, to be between $10,000 and $15,000 or $7,500 and £11,300.
So fully within the remortgage your house category of bikes.
Yeah. Really spenny, but look, if it wasn't for products like these, then in 5 years' time, for example, this technology would never get properly developed. So can't wait to see more on this bike when it releases. Now, it's no secret that Sam, you care about your hair, don't you, mate? So this man couldn't be more thrilled when he saw Muc-Off's latest release, which looks like a hairdryer. So tell us a bit about the Muc-Off Air Blaster.
You're not wrong, mate. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of akin to a Dyson Airblade, isn't it?
It is really, yeah.
But no, this is intended for drying your bike so that you can have a contactless drying process. So the theory behind it is that it will allow you to blow out and dry areas that you wouldn't be able to reach with a cloth, but also you can use it to dry the frame, meaning that you won't have to, pull fabric like microfiber towels and whatever else, kitchen roll, that's what I tend to use, over your frame, which ultimately does just kind of mar and dull the paintwork. And if you've used a ceramic coating on your bike, then obviously it means that the water just flies off.
Comes off,
which is nice. So I think there is a valid use case. And I can see the link with Muc-Off. Obviously, they're a cleaning brand, and this is part of the cleaning process. It's not something I would have necessarily expected them to release.
I must say, it came as a bit of a surprise to me as well. I think the first thing I thought, to be honest, was, really?
Yeah,
really
exactly.
To dry your bike? But no, as you say, especially in a lot of cases as well, I know I'm guilty of this. My bike cleaning stuff, as in the rags and stuff like that, is not clean. There's definitely contaminants when I'm drying my bike. So no, I do get the use case, even though I think it's only fair we poke a bit of fun at it as well.
Absolutely. But I've got to say, actually, the build quality on this thing is really
it does
very
look
good.
nice, yeah.
And they've done a really good job of creating something that looks quite unique and very well put together. In terms of tech specs on this thing, you've got 4 different speeds. There's a low, medium, high, and then if you hold it down, I think, there you go, you get the turbo. And on turbo mode, that fan's spinning at 100,000 RPM.
Wow.
So it's got some punch behind it. I didn't really find a use case for the 3 lower speeds, I'll be totally honest.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not too sure what you would use those for. But this product has a bit of an issue.
Go on.
And it's not actually with the product itself.
Yep.
I think it's more around the fact that this isn't the only thing in the market. Some people might know of this product shape as actually being something else.
Yep.
PC cleaners, keyboard, dusters. So I called in another one from K&F Concept. This one is sold on Amazon. Again, I've linked both of these products below if you want to find them for yourself. This is actually a more powerful pump because on its highest setting, it can reach 160,000 RPM.
For a similar size fan by the looks of things.
For a similar size fan, yeah.
Yeah.
Both very comparable. I will say this is made of plastic. It's actually a bit lighter because it's not CNC metal. For the use case of drying a bike, this works really well.
Yeah.
Now, another thing. The Muc-Off does come with a silicone adapter that you can add into the nozzle here, which essentially makes that nozzle a little bit smaller so you get a more targeted and direct flow of air. You get the same thing with this too, but not only that, with this you get a whole bunch of other accessories, which means you can use this in a number of other scenarios. And it gets worse when you think about the price.
This is going to be a kicker, isn't it? Go on.
So the Muc-Off Air Blaster retails for £120 here in the UK. Quite a lot of money for a handheld fan.
Yeah.
The K&F Concept lands just south of £40.
Yeah.
And you can pick that up on Amazon. And I've had a really hard time working out why I would want to spend more money on this.
It appears pretty hard to justify, doesn't it? And I think I know there's going to be people down below probably mentioning that this is the return of cycling tax.
Yeah.
Arguably. And of course, yeah, look, it's a nicer build quality.
Yes.
There's things going for that Muc-Off product, but 120 quid for something to dry your bike with, I think I can't see enough people, to be honest, thinking that's a worthwhile investment. I won't use kitchen roll. But
yeah,
time will tell.
But that's the thing. If you can find something which is a third of the price,
40 quid, yeah.
Actually, that makes for a more compelling. Actually, yeah, I would like to use that rather than using like kitchen roll or a microfiber towel or something. So, I think the use case brilliant.
Yeah.
But maybe you'd be better off with something a little bit cheaper. Now, Joe, Hunt. Big release.
Big release.
A bread and butter release, some may say.
Yes.
New Aerodynamicists.
You're exactly right. Yes. So this is pretty big news, we think. Hunt has released 6 new wheel sets. The new iteration of the Aerodynamicists wheels. Now, as Sam said, this is kind of their bread and butter product, right? This is like meant to be good value, fast, big name beating wheel set. And the update, to be honest, we think looks pretty compelling.
Yeah.
So they've released 3 new depths of wheels, 34 34s, obviously millimeters we're talking about here, 44 46s, and 54 58s. And within each of those depths, there's 2 wheel sets. So there's one with carbon spokes and one with normal steel spokes. By the way, they are all on the same hubs. Interesting point there. So the engineering objective with these was essentially to build on the performance that they already had. So maintain the aerodynamic performance, but optimize them for modern day tyre standards or what people are tending towards. So 28 to 30 millimeters, these wheels have been optimized for, and try and make these just a little bit lighter. So the wheels are built off the non-limitless technology, limitless being their sort of range-topping wheels. But they still feature a few different things. They've got specific rim profiles for front and rear wheels. The ratchet hub as well, 9 degree of engagement. That's nice. And they feature enduro bearings as well in the hubs, seal cartridge steel bearings. But I think the best thing to do is jump into some of the numbers because they're really quite impressive if their white papers to be believed. So. The 54-58, that's the deepest wheel set. They were tested against a set of the Zip 404s. They beat them by 0.94 watts and undercut them by 168 grams.
Now, I think there's something to just like add here, which is that less than a watt of a saving.
You're never going to notice.
I could have a haircut and lose that.
Yeah,
Ultimately, it makes no difference. The key thing here is that they're keeping pace.
Yes,
They
exactly,
are as good
exactly.
as something that costs a lot more money.
Yeah.
That's the key takeaway.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and quantifying this sort of with the price as well and the weight. So the cheapest wheels, the 34s with the standard steel spokes. Now those cost £1,150 here in the UK and weigh 1,346 grams claimed weight. Now that's fairly competitive. Going up to the carbon spoked version, they're £1,549, but they weigh 1,175 grams for a pair.
So 1,200 grams.
It's really impressive, right?
Good.
Also, let's just upscale that to the 54, 58s. Still, for the carbon spoked version, under 1,400 grams for a nearly 60mm wheel set. Really impressive. So yeah, we're really looking forward to getting our hands on these and giving them a test out. Of course, you know, they need to ride well. We need to see how stiff they are, how responsive they are on the road as well. But on paper, these look really, really impressive. And I think we were just sort of saying, for their bread and butter product, it needs to be really strong. Yeah. And this, on paper, looks to be that. So very interested to test them more. Now, you may have heard a couple of weeks ago now, Factor launched a new road bike, the Factor Monza. And it sort of hopes to provide a mid-range offering from Factor, which traditionally is obviously a really premium brand. Yeah. What we're looking at here is £6,400 for a sort of aero bike that, look, I'd say shares design language of the Ostrovan.
100%.
And comes with Ultegra. And this is like, I think it's about 1,100 grams for the frame. So it's a bit heavier, but it's still an aero bike. It's still a great looking bike.
Yeah, I think it's really smart.
And just sort of brings that price point down. It's about £3,000 cheaper, I think, than the sort of cheapest Ostro. But it's got us thinking, £6,500, still a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
What has happened to the mid-range road bike?
I think, in my mind, it's a way for brands like Factor that have previously occupied that high-end space. Essentially, I think because they've owned that space and they are now associated as being a high-end, expensive brand, they're kind of leveraging that to now unlock a mid-range market.
Sort of new customer base.
A new customer base, and hopefully make more money out of that. Which, to be honest, I don't think, really, we've got nothing against that at all.
Yeah.
It's one of those things of, what, £6,000? That's a lot of money still.
A huge sum.
For a mid-range road bike. But, I mean, I'd be keen to hear from, what do you think? How do you think that, because Factor aren't the first ones to be doing this.
No, they're really not. We were speaking off camera that Pinarello, for example, launching the F Series.
Yeah.
Cannondale sort of does it the other way around, of course, because they launched Lab 71 to almost sort of down peg high mod. I think, there's a few different arguments at play here, aren't there? Because on the one hand, I think you've got, has the bike market overinflated slightly, and all of a sudden brands are thinking, oh God, we need to find a way to sell these things, but we can't devalue our range topping products because from a marketing perspective, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
Are they sort of backpedaling, or the other way of looking at it is actually like a mid-range bike now, you do get so much more technology than you would have done on a mid-range bike from, say, 10 years ago. Obviously you would, but I think that it is worth noting that like a mid-range bike in, say, 2018, generally speaking, was not Di2, was not disc brake. There was a lot more disparity, I would say, in the quality of bikes back then. I think it's a much more level playing field now.
Yeah.
So you are definitely getting more not bang for your buck necessarily, but you're getting more bike for that higher price.
Yeah.
But what do you think, Sam? Are you in that sort of camp of the brands are sort of worrying a little bit now the market's overinflated, or do you think it's fair enough?
Well, I think from my perspective, I think that brands have created this like super unattainable level of bike pricing for the majority of people.
Yes.
And they've invested so much within that category that now they are hoping to unlock a new market that's kind of trickling down from that top end. That's not anything new. Per se. The people that are racing these bikes professionally don't even require the best of what's on the market. And I think the same goes for all of us as well. Bikes,
more so.
Yeah. Bikes have become so good that what is now being made at that kind of mid-range price point, which is still a whole chunk of money, is arguably maybe anywhere between 5 and 15% worse than a range topper, but is so good now that I think we now have to treat the mid-range as being the best of what you could hope to ride. Ultimately, beyond that, you're not buying it for any reason that makes logical sense. You're buying it out of emotion.
Yes. Yeah, this is true. And the other thing I remember you mentioned the other day was that actually, if you then take these mid-range bikes and then you compare them to range toppers from a few years ago, that's then a really interesting comparison as well, because as I say, you get more in the mid-range now than you used to, but the pricing is higher. What's the gap then between, say, a Tarmac SL6 S-Works and a mid-range, just the standard specialised frame set of the SL8, for example? But yeah, the mid-range is a lot more complicated than it used to be, a lot more expensive.
Yeah. And I think it's tough as well with there being so much uncertainty around tariffs and the future of bike pricing. It feels nice to be able to go with something a little bit more concrete and solid in that second-hand market. And yeah, you're going to end up with something which is performance-wise pretty indistinguishable from the very best out there. Now, a quick interlude to tell you about this video sponsor, the Insurance Emporium. If you're considering getting your bike insured, or perhaps you want to explore another provider, the Insurance Emporium is worth checking out. They have a de facto 5-star rating, a Trustpilot score of excellent, and a FIFO Platinum trusted service. You can cover up to 6 bikes on one policy at a time, all of which can be protected from things like theft, loss, or accidental damage. Having anything bad happen to your pride and joy is always painful, but with an insurance policy, you can at least mitigate some of that heartache by knowing that someone has your back. So if you'd like to check them out, then there's a link down below, and there's also details of a discount available on their website.
Now, this month's Bike of the Month sits firmly in this mid-range, doesn't it, Sam? Because Cannondale has finally released a new Synapse.
Correct. As of today, the Synapse has just, the embargo has been lifted. And I've got to say, looking at it, it's a bit of fresh air compared to the previous version.
It is, isn't it? It's had a clean-up.
It's definitely had a clean-up. The Synapse has had, I'd say, arguably one of the best reputations in the bike industry of great endurance and a great endurance platform. And I think with the last version of that bike, it kind of fell from grace slightly.
It struggled, didn't it, I think?
Yeah, and for a number of reasons. But I mean, the key thing really, I think, was that customers didn't really want SmartSense integrated into the bike in the way that it was. And this new bike, not only does it look to fix that, but it also just looks much better.
Yeah.
I think as a bike, it looks really, really clean. It's got some really nice lines to it, I think. And it's distinctive. It's clearly got something about it which makes it unique and differentiates it from other models on the market.
So on that note, what is this bike? Who is this bike actually aimed at? Because this category, all-road, gravel, endurance, often moulds into one. So who have Cannondale gone after for the new Synapse?
Yes, basically everything you've just said. So all-road, endurance, gravel. It seems like this bike is literally for all three of those things.
Okay.
Tyre clearance wise, you can get a 48 on the front and you can get a 42 on the rear.
Okay, yeah.
Even around those sizes, there's 4 mil of clearance on either side. So there's a good chance you could squeeze a 50 on the front and a 44 or 45 on the rear. So, we're talking, those are gravel sizes.
They are.
Fast gravel sizes. I think it will do a good job of serving all of those people though. Okay. And, what I'm excited about is the fact that they seem to have doubled down on just tightening it up and actually making the bike a bit lighter as well. Obviously, if you put on a set of really fat tyres, then that weight saving is going to be somewhat destroyed. But that's kind of by the by.
So what are we talking about weight-wise for the frames?
So for the frames, on the standard carbon build, the frame weight is going to be somewhere in the region of 1,150 grams.
Okay.
Whereas for the high mod build, that is going to be around that 1,000 gram mark. So about 150 grams saving there. The only thing that I thought was a little bit confusing when I read the press release for this bike was that the Lab 71 model uses a high mod construction.
Right. Yeah.
Now, previously, rightly or wrongly, potentially wrongly, when the Super 6 launched, the Lab 71 had its own carbon layup.
To be a bit lighter, a bit stiffer.
To be a bit lighter, to be a bit stiffer, and that was called the Series 0 layup. I thought those two were joined together in the same way that Specialized reserves its highest layup for the S-Works models. Seems like that's not the case with Lab 71. Lab 71 is not synonymous with a better carbon layup.
Right.
What it is about is limited editions, so special colorways and something that makes that bike a little bit more unique, which I've got to be honest is a huge shame.
It does devalue it slightly, I think, doesn't it? As a sort of branding sort of name.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit weak, to be fair.
A little bit. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily, it's not a bad thing, but I think it's. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It kind of does just weaken that Lab 71 branding.
It's cheeky is what it is, isn't it? It's cheeky, I think,
Yeah.
from a consumer's perspective, I would say.
Because if you were to buy a Lab 71 bike, I'd probably, you'd want people to know that, well, it's a little bit better, isn't it? It's, it's got something a little bit more fancy than someone else's. But, and I'd want that to extend beyond just the paintwork. But by the by, the Synapse range, I think, if we forget the top end that the majority of people are not going to buy, the bikes that have been released today span from a mechanical 105 to a 105 Di2, an Ultegra Di2, and another Ultegra Di2, but with the high mod frame rather than the standard carbon frame.
Right. And price-wise, what are we looking at for sort of the start and end point of those?
Yeah, sure. So starting price is going to be just shy of £3,000, and then at the very top end, the Lab 71 build is coming in at £13,000.
Steep.
Very steep, but one thing to remember, SmartSense, obviously the fairly controversial thing about the last Synapse, is still around and it is back on this Lab 71 build, but I've got to say, in a much better form.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. SmartSense, as it has been released today on that new Lab 71 model, is really how it should have come out in the first place. It's definitely very well thought through. The really nice thing is that the battery that powers the SmartSense system actually powers the SRAM rear derailleur as well.
Nice.
So I think that's quite cool. Again, it's kind of coming at it from that point of view of, look, we've got a central battery. How much stuff can we power off the back of it? The lights as well are a little bit more sophisticated, so that front light's a bit brighter, and then the integration of the rear light in the under the saddle, again, just that little bit neater, a little bit smaller, and of course still has the radar system as well, which I know a lot of people are actually really big fans of. I hear there's a lot of, just on radars in general, I think there's a bit of skepticism before you start using it, but I hear when you do start using them, you're like, oh, actually, I really like this. So I think riders of the Synapse, I think they'll value that. So that's a positive thing.
Endurance bikes as well, obviously coming feature packed these days. What else is on the menu for the Synapse?
So another cool thing, integrated frame storage.
Nice.
It's something that actually we just really like. And there's a stash in there as well, so you can pack it full of like tools and, in my case, probably sweets. So that's quite nice. The other thing I will say is that they're continuing with their wheel sensor system as well. So if you want to use that, then you can. I think the other thing to just bear in mind as well is that whilst the top end Lab 71 with the SRAM red group set is coming with SmartSense from stock, my bet would be if SRAM brings out new group sets sometime soon,
which have been leaked,
I would imagine that Cannondale will they might launch some more Synapse models with those group sets and then trickle out that SmartSense tech elsewhere.
It does make sense, doesn't it? I think there's a distinct lack of SRAM builds at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think, there's a good chance we see those. It would be cool as well if they trickled down the SmartSense technology down to a lower price point.
Exactly that. So yeah, I think we'll have to wait and see if anything happens there at all. I think it's a case of we need to get the bike in, test it, see
how it rides.
See how it rides, yeah, because I think on paper at least, if you consider that obviously bikes are generally just quite a lot of money at the moment and that's really hard to escape, ultimately I think they're good looking builds. I think this is a good chance for the Synapse to kind of potentially reclaim its crown. Well, there we have it. Let us know what you think of the new Cannondale Synapse and let us know what you think a mid-range bike should cost.